Okay, moving on to number 9, which is an update on select litigation and related issues, the writ of mandamus. And we do have our interim county attorney, Carrie Neal. Welcome. I feel like we need like an intro video or an intro tune for people to be able to walk down and come around. Yeah, like a walk-up song. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, Commissioners. My name is Carrie Neal, and I'm the acting county attorney. I'm here today to present to you an update on current litigation that is filed against the sheriff, the county sheriff, and to explain some of the issues surrounding this litigation. I know that the board is aware of the petition for writ of mandamus that was filed, but I've been receiving a lot of questions about the filing. I have also received questions about information being presented to the public and the current status of the lawsuit, so I hope to respond to that today. This information is being presented in this fashion because everything included is a matter of public record, and presentation is the best way to inform the board, the county employees, and the public regarding this matter. I will also not be discussing anything that is attorney-client privileged, and there is no need for the board to agree on anything or take any action. This is purely for the purpose of providing information. So to ensure that we're all speaking the same language and understand some of the terminology, I have a few definitions that I want to go over. You're likely familiar with many of these, but as I said, I want to make sure that we have the same understanding of these words throughout the presentation. So the first definition is mandamus, which is Latin for we command. A writ of mandamus is issued by a court to a lower court or government officer to carry out their official duties. There are other types of writs, but we are focusing on the writ of mandamus today. A petition for writ is what was filed against the Doña Ana County Sheriff, asking the court to order her to commission the officers graduating from the DAC Academy. The court then makes the decision whether or not to actually issue the writ. There is also the word IPRA, which stands for Information or Inspection of Public Records Act. This is a New Mexico law that allows the public to obtain copies of many public records. There's a similar federal law called FOIA, which stands for Freedom of Information Act, but today we will be focusing on IPRA, or talking about IPRA. It's important to know that failure to comply with IPRA could result in statutory damages up to $100 per day. The next term is discovery. It's a legal process in which parties to litigation are generally allowed to obtain information to help them prepare for trial. So generally, discoverable information is any information that is not privileged, such as attorney-client communications, and that is relevant or may lead to the discovery of relevant evidence. It's important to know that information that is protected under IPRA is not necessarily protected in discovery. So something that is denied in an IPRA request might still be discoverable in litigation. It's also extremely important for persons and entities involved in litigation to participate in discovery, partly because failure to comply with discovery can result in sanctions such as monetary damages, being held in contempt of court, adverse actions given to adverse instructions given to the jury, or in some extreme cases, dismissal of the case or finding in favor of the opposing party. When you are on the side of defense, providing your attorney with all relevant information also provides your attorney with the information that they need to defend your case. So the next word is statute. In New Mexico, statutes are laws of the federal or state governments. I specify in New Mexico because the same word may mean something different in other states. Also, throughout this presentation, when I use the word statute or NMSA section with numbers following that, I'm referring to the state laws. If I'm talking about a federal law, I will specify that it is a federal law that I'm referring to. We also have ordinances, which, as you all know, are the laws of the county, and policies and procedures, which are rules that are set by an organization or body explaining how things are to occur within that organization. So why file a petition for writ? Well, I have to give you a little bit of history to explain this. So NMSA Section 441.5 authorizes sheriffs to appoint deputies. This word appoint seems to be used interchangeably in the statutes and case law with the word commission. So when a sheriff appoints a deputy, they are commissioning that deputy. The statutes are silent as to whether someone other than a police chief or sheriff can commission or appoint deputies, which potentially means that the duty resides with the chief or the sheriff alone. Just to draw a line of distinction here, the commission goes beyond taking the oath. Anyone can take an oath to uphold the law, and many people can administer an oath. In order for an officer to have the right to enforce the law, that officer must be commissioned by a police chief or sheriff. On Monday, February 10th, County Manager Andrews was notified that Major John Day, who had been with the county for 20 years, or has been with the county for 20 years, and Captain Brian Johnston were going to be decommissioned. If they are decommissioned, they no longer have the right to enforce the law. NMSA Section 441.5 does not allow a sheriff to decommission officers when there is a merit system in place. Doña Ana County has established a merit system which must be followed under Section 441.5 before an officer can be decommissioned. When the sheriff was notified of this, she sent multiple emails stating that if she can't decommission the officers, she will not commission them. In fact, her email to Human Resources states, "Our cadets are graduating today. I have been told I cannot decommission anyone." That suggests there is no need to commission anyone going forward. You might want to have some written documentation indicating to these employees from where they derive their power. It would appear they obtained their power to enforce the law, etc., in Doña Ana County by job description classification only. Good luck on that. Again, there's nothing in the statute that says officers obtain their power to enforce the law through an action of Human Resources. If that was the case, county manager or the board could have asked someone else to perform that duty, and there would have been no need for a writ. But there's also some other historical information that led to the filing of the writ. First, there have been 2 other writs filed against this sheriff. The first was filed June 10th, 2022, seeking to have Sheriff Kim Stewart carry out her duty to serve process in the prosecution of criminal cases. And in fact, an issue of service arose again yesterday. We received an email from an outside party stating that they had reached out to the sheriff's office and told us that the sheriff was told that the sheriff does not serve papers. To be clear, under NMSA Section 441.14, it is the duty of the sheriff or the sheriff's deputies to serve legal documents. So going back to the writs, the second writ was filed on September 29th, 2022. This writ dealt with the sheriff's refusal to comply with NMSA Section 29.1.1, which requires the sheriff to cooperate with the district attorney or prosecutor by providing documentation of investigations conducted. In this case, the sheriff conducted an investigation regarding the death of an individual and was refusing to provide the information to the prosecutor. On December 30th, 2022, Vanessa Loya filed a lawsuit against the Doñana County Sheriff's Department and Sheriff Kim Stewart for refusal to provide documents under an IPRA request. Litigation in this case is ongoing, and please keep in mind that the penalty for not providing responsive documents to the IPRA request could be up to $100 a day since 2022. So while one instance would not necessarily be cause for concern, the refusal to provide relevant responses appears to be a pattern. There was a rumor early in the week of February 10th that the sheriff did not want to provide responses to another IPRA request. I don't take much stock into rumors. I like evidence. So then on the morning of February 13th, the sheriff suggested to the county manager that the county cease and desist with the urge to release documents which were responsive to an IPRA request. The problem does not end there. On January 15th, the sheriff refused to participate in discovery, again, which could come along with sanctions, with respect to litigation involving the county and DASO, stating that it was overly burdensome. Usually, the court does not accept the excuse that something is overly burdensome unless it is extremely burdensome and will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So saying that something is overly burdensome is not a good reason not to participate in discovery. Then there are the cases against the county and/or the sheriff for violations of the Whistleblower Protection Act, all filed between April 11th, 2023 and January 21st, 2025, all of which allege retaliation suffered at the hands of Sheriff Kim Stewart. Notably, the most recent filing was by Brian Johnston, one of the deputies that the sheriff intended to decommission on February 11th. A letter was hand-delivered to the county manager during the last board meeting. The letter from counsel for Officers Johnston and Day alleges that the reason for the decommissioning the two officers was retaliation against them for filing an EEO complaint and filing a lawsuit. So when the sheriff said she was not going to commission the new cadets and then followed through with that threat at graduation, the county manager decided that legal action needed to be taken to put the safety and well-being of our community and the DASO trainees first. The petition for writ was filed on February 13th, 2025, shortly after graduation ended. The writ was signed by the judge and filed at 9:58 a.m. on February 14th. The signed writ was served to the sheriff's office at 3:18 p.m. The sheriff herself was not available at the time of service, so we don't know exactly when the sheriff received the order. What we do know is that the next day she took to social media on her personal page to discuss the matter. Somehow the focus was changed from the sheriff's commissioning or from sheriff's comments about not commissioning because she couldn't decommission to the longstanding battle between the sheriff and human resources. And it has sort of spiraled since then, with different versions of the story being told, none of which contain the full truth. I was hoping to be able to stand here before you today and tell you the whole story from both sides. I did reach out to the sheriff and requested a meeting to discuss this issue and to discuss her processes and procedures and necessary timeframes for the academy so that we can ensure the delays she complained about do not occur in the future. I let her know that if she would discuss these things with me, I would work with HR and the county manager to get us all on the same page. After multiple requests, I was told the sheriff would not meet with anyone from county management. So I am left to put together the pieces of information that I have available. And what appears to me to be happening is misdirection, smoke screens, confusion, and deflection. Is it possible that HR got some pieces wrong? Of course. Is it also possible that the full blame is being placed on HR when HR was not fully to blame? Of course. So let's talk about the application process. It's long and involved because we have to make sure that the people we are trusting to enforce the law are trustworthy. They have to be safe. They have to be able to carry out one of the most stressful, strenuous, dangerous jobs and do those jobs well. So as you can see, even the initial packet must be complete and must show that the person is fit to carry out this job. Once a candidate has passed the initial approval stages, they are scheduled for medical and psychological exams. The medical exams are delivered directly to HR, but the psychological exams are delivered to the sheriff. The entire candidate assessment file must be sent to the HR administrator, who then reviews the packet. They have to ensure the packet is complete and that the information provided is consistent. In other words, if someone admits to having committed a crime in their psychological evaluation, but did not otherwise admit to having committed a crime, it could be an area of concern that would need to be reviewed more closely. So it's critical for HR to get the packets timely and for those packets to be complete and in order. But the county is not the only body setting those standards. The New Mexico Law Enforcement Academy also has to pass the applicants, and they have their own administrative codes that explain the process for becoming an officer. As you can see here, before a person is allowed to begin training as a law enforcement officer, they have to have a psychological exam. And the report from that exam must be attached to one of the forms submitted to the Law Enforcement Academy. So when it was reported that months ago, DASO had 19 recruits who had gone through this process and then says HR jumped in and terminated 5, that is not true. In fact, Sheriff Stewart informed Interim County Manager Stephen Lopez that LEA would not allow 5 of the cadet applicants to attend the academy. She said, "I was informed yesterday by LEA that 5 of our cadet applicants have been refused by LEA and cannot attend our academy. They have cited reasons from psychological testing to ethical lapses using only state statute as explanations. The LEA director, Sonia Chavez, admits this has never been done before, but cites poor judgment, in effect, by us to pick our cadet applicants. These 5 people have been working for us for months. The academy starts this Monday. LEA is telling me if I let them attend pending what they say is an appealable process, they will close our academy. I am firing these people now, then, as I have no alternative." On her personal page, the sheriff raised multiple issues dealing with the status of cadets. To be clear, this is an ongoing issue which had been discussed for months. You can see this email from back in September where HR was requesting the psychological reports, which apparently were not ready even in September. In fact, there are hundreds of emails spanning more than a year which the sheriff and others discussed the policies and, I went too far. Discussed the policies, the issues with the psychological exams and clearances, and the procedures for getting these cadets ready for the academy. So the sheriff's claim that she was blindsided or unaware of issues with the psychological exams is simply not true. So now that we have run all the way around the world, the truth of the matter is that the sheriff's response in not commissioning the officers goes back to the fact that under the statute, she cannot decommission the officers. So where are we now? Well, at this point, it appears that the sheriff commissioned all 14 officers that were remaining at the academy, but she must provide that information to the court before February 28th. So where are we now? We started with 19 applicants. 5 were not approved by LEA. 7 were questioned by Doña Ana County HR. There was something in their application process that was of concern. 5 of the 7 were cleared through the appeal process. 1 was not cleared and was terminated. One needed follow-up and is still going through that follow-up process, and we're hopeful that he'll be cleared within the next few days. So when I said that the sheriff has to provide information to the court, it's not just to the court in response to the writ. NMSA section 44110 states that when a sheriff appoints a deputy, it is the duty of the sheriff to file one notice of the appointment with the office of the county clerk, one notice of the appointment to the office of the clerk in the district court, and then the sheriff's deputies shall file an oath of office with the county clerk. The deputies have filed their notice of oath of office with the county clerk, but I do not have anything at this time to show that the sheriff has filed her notices. Before I get to the questions, I do want to make one other comment. This is not personal against Sheriff Kim Stewart. This is about the processes and procedures and laws that surround this issue. This is about making sure that we have set the expected standard and that it is the same for all persons. We want to ensure that all of our sheriffs going forward are following the statutes, ordinances, and policies. We want to make sure that future sheriffs are aware of what it is that they need to do and that they are expected to follow the same policies and procedures. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Neal. Commissioners, any questions at this time?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Sanchez.
Thank you. Ms. Neal, I know you highlighted the op-ed that came out that was written by Mr. Goodman. There were a couple of points and comments in there that I was hoping, I don't know if you're able to answer, but one in particular, let me read the quote here. It says, talks about the analysis by the psychological evaluation. States, quote, if Dr. Cave mentions a recruit's bitterness towards an ex-spouse but sees no huge red flag, why assume you can make a better judgment than she without her education or experience or personal interview? If a recruit stole 10 beers stole beers 10 years ago when working as a bartender, is some clerk best positioned to decide how important that is? I think those are very specific cases that Mr. Goodman highlights, and I'm just concerned, are these like packets publicly available? I don't know if, is there potential that these are very, I mean, they seem so specific that it almost seems like these came out of personnel files. And where can they be shared? Who has that access to those files?
Yes, Commissioner, I understand your concern and I agree with it. I don't know where that information came from. I don't know if those were random examples pulled out of somewhere. Those psychological evaluations, as I said in my presentation, the psychologist performs the evaluations. They send those directly to the sheriff, and then those evaluations are given to HR, and they should never be released under any circumstances. So I don't know where that information came from, or if that was, you know, some sort of just an example that was pulled out, or if someone shared that information when they shouldn't have.
Okay. The second part of it just talks about, it says here, talks about the appeal process, and it says, you know, I think you addressed this about fire the 7 and fire 2, but then it says in parentheticals, HR reportedly fired 1 by breaching the chain of command and ordering the DASO major to do it. I don't know if you might be able to address that process and if the chain of command was breached.
Yes, I can absolutely address that process. Communications from the sheriff regarding that matter, sheriff stated that she was not going to be involved in the termination of one of the deputies. And so we were left with no choice but to go to the next person in that chain of command. And so that did not actually come from human resources. They don't have the ability to hire and fire. The hiring and firing ultimately falls on the decision of the county manager, who makes that decision in conjunction usually with the heads of the departments. And so the county manager in that case was forced to ask the major to step in and perform that duty because the sheriff had stated that she was not going to.
Okay, so there was no intent or broken chain of command.
No, there was not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. Commissioners, any other comment?
Mr. Chair,
Vice Chair.
thank you. Ms. Niels, and you went through this rather quickly, actually. And so I was trying to take notes, but I don't write as quickly as you were speaking. So just to go back to some of the slides, I am aware of the failure to perform duties by Sheriff Kim Stewart, and I wrote 6/10/22 and 9/29/22. Can you just go over that again and let me know if I missed any?
So the 9/29/22 is a writ of mandamus that was filed by the district attorney's office regarding her failure to produce the complete file on her investigation with the death of an individual, a resident of Doña Ana County. And then the other, sorry, I think I'm going the wrong way. There we go. The 6/10/22 was also a writ of mandamus that was filed by the district attorney's office because the sheriff had failed to serve process in regard to some domestic violence cases. And so the victims of those cases were not able to have a hearing and get the relief that they needed, which potentially further put them in danger. Those are the writs that were actually filed. There have been other complaints about refusals to transport prisoners, refusals to provide officers at the Gadsden schools, concerns for proper security at the courthouse, here in Las Cruces. It seems like there were a couple of others, but I can't remember quite what they were off the top of my head. But those have not been involved in active litigation at this point.
And just a follow-up question to that, Ms. Niels, regarding the writ of mandamus on the 29th of September of 2022, and I may be incorrect on this, but the sheriff does not have the ability to rule on the death of anyone. Rather, it is left up to the district attorney, the medical examiner, so it cannot be named an accident when there is a death. So that shouldn't be done by a sheriff. Am I correct on that?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioners, anything else? Commissioners, I do want to point out, and this conversation is very helpful, and I want to thank you for your work on this. I know that this takes a lot of time and effort and energy, and I appreciate that. My question is as we're looking at this and processing this with our fellow board members and members of the public and everyone here today, at what point do we need to look at what is going on in DASO and how we're handling this and where we're going and what the future looks like? Do we need to maybe ask for an external audit to be performed on DASO to see exactly where we're at, what's going on, because we do see a lot of these lawsuits coming forth on a regular basis. And I think we owe it not only to ourselves as the Board of County Commission, but also to the public to see exactly what's going on and where can we take this next. This is a huge undertaking, and it is a lot. It's a lot to process. It's a lot to go through. not even I understand the entirety of what we're dealing with. So commissioners, I would like to point out that maybe it is time that we get an external audit going and we kind of see what is going on and where the deficiencies are and what we can do to help the sheriff and help the department, especially the deputies and the employees of the sheriff going forward, to see what we can do to help, to see what we can do to make sure that the public have faith in what we're doing here today and what's going on. So I don't know if that's a conversation that we would like to have, if that is a conversation worth having, but I would personally like to see exactly where the deficiencies are and how to bring us up to where they need to be and helping the deputies, the command staff, and the sheriff moving forward. But that's just my thoughts, commissioners. I would love to hear your thoughts. But I think that is a good path forward. I'm getting nods.
And just to make sure I'm clear, I would require some, at least 3 of you nodding in that direction, as that's something that I don't have authority to do as I could for IT or such. So I'm watching closely to make sure I see at least 3 heads nodding on that.
I agree.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I think that's an excellent idea. I think as we move forward to set guidance to not only the deputies that are working, also the sheriff, but to make sure that they are safe in their jobs. They do a hard job every day. I am very fortunate that I work alongside of them almost on a daily basis. And I'm seeing the stress of the department right now, and I'm seeing the stress of the command staff right now. And for us to move forward in a transparent and legal way, I think that, at least in my opinion, an external audit is due. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And I think that's the key word too, is external. It can be handled outside of the county. Anyone else? Any other public or any other commission comment?
Mr. Chairman, I guess my only question is this: if we move forward and you're looking for someone external, is that something that would be discussed at a future meeting for approval for a contract? Or?
I would imagine so.
Yeah, I've been making eye contact with our fantastic auditor, Ernest, in the back of the crowd there. And, he is a team of one, so this is something from a capacity standpoint, we would have to outsource and go through that process. And we would certainly circle back as a leadership team to make sure you're all informed as well as the public.
So
Thank you
Yeah.
for that answer.
it would come forth
Dr.
before
Andrews.
the board, yeah.
I think, and Mr. Budden, thank you so much for the nod. The only other thought is, and I would absolutely love to figure out how, you know, if the process is internal with DASO, is it internal to the county, or how we have handoffs? I don't know, depending on the scope of it. I would love to figure out how we get better at this. I think we want to avoid future issues. I think that's one of the things that we've seen with, you know, I think the whole idea with this audit is to try, at least my hope is how do we improve and get better at this? So I think I would be supportive of us having an agenda item to look at for that.
I thank you for that, Commissioner. I think that's right. Any other commission comment? Seeing none? Thank you, Ms. Niels. We appreciate you today and your work. And by the way, welcome to the county.
Thank you.
What week is this, ma'am?
Is this week 3? It's gone very quickly and been very busy, so yes.
Not
week 3.
that you're counting down by any means.
No.
Yes, there is public comment, and we will go ahead and call for that. We do, same thing goes. We do have the white book to the left. If you can please come up, address the commission, state your name, sign the book.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Yes.
We might want to let the public know that this is out of normal process to have comments on presentations. This is unusual for the board. I'm in favor of it, but I think the public should know we don't normally do this. Thank you.
Okay. I believe something of this magnitude welcomes public comment. I think the floor is yours, sir. And we do have the timer up on the clock as well, or on the board as well.
Okay, good morning, Chair, other commissioners, county manager. My name is Jaime Quesada, former law enforcement, was actually a former undersheriff at one time also. Something that I wanted to bring up that actually commend Commissioner Sanchez for bringing up at the very end, which was got me to stand up. I agree that it needs to be audited, but it's not just DASO. I might not agree with the practices that the sheriff has done up to today, to this date, but there is some practices that need to be reviewed, also involving the way HR is getting involved into the matter. Because I do agree with what Mr. Goodman put in his article, that there's some expertise areas that should not be involving HR. You have to understand the process. If they're going to do that, then be ready for the qualified immunity issue to come up if you ever end up getting in a lawsuit where an officer is doing something, because they're going to want all the history of anyone that approved that deputy or officer's actions, all the way to the field training officer's signature. So if that's going to happen and you're going to be the expert agreeing to that, on why they got hired, the process and all that, I believe you just involved yourself in that. So be ready to be that professional in that. Doesn't it be audited? Yes. But I ask that you also look back at all the anonymous complaints that have been brought to the county, because there's several comments and issues, not only on HR's practices, but also on DASO and their administration. There's been some manipulation from some administrative people in DASO to influence the sheriff because of whether lack of knowledge of the process of certain hiring or certain laws or practices in law enforcement here in New Mexico that you need to be aware of. So yes, do I fully agree with the audit? 110%. With the goals of bettering everything for the community and the deputies. I do not understand why the Sheriff's Office, HR, the Commission, Law Enforcement Academy Board, everyone that has a piece to be involved in this process can't meet at a table. I don't care if you hate each other that day and the next day, but let's accomplish the goals. That's all that matters. Take the personal stuff out, leave your feelings and emotions at the door, and apply the logic that is necessary to make this work. That's all I say as a constituent now, former law enforcement, and good luck, because I know there's a lot of emotions and stuff that's being brought into this, and it's affecting deputies, and I get a lot of calls from people. I felt I had to stand up and say something. So thank you. You have a tough job. Just follow through with it. That's all I ask.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, point of order.
What is your point of order, Commissioner?
Since we are offering public comment, are we also going to sign the book? I don't
They
think Mr.
are signing the
Jaime did.
book, I believe, sir.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your
And they're
comment.
stating
Jaime.
their name as well.
Peter Goodman again. Good morning, Commissioners. With respect, first of all, I want to thank the previous speaker, agree with what he said. He's obviously got great experience in the field, too. Want to apologize for the error in my column, attributing to the HR, the firing of those 5, where there was no appeal process. I don't know whether I misunderstood the sheriff, or at some point in a conversation she said they did this and she meant LEA and I thought she meant the county. I don't know what the story is on that. I do know I made a hell of a lot of phone calls to people at the county and got zilch in the way of information. And I think that's unfortunate. I'll still take responsibility for my error if it was one, but y'all ought to be more responsive. I also have a suggestion. I have no idea whether it's in line with trying to improve, as you're talking about. And I have no idea whether this is feasible particularly under current circumstances where you are limited in your legal assistance. But it sometimes seems as if the sheriff ought to have a dedicated legal officer, maybe part-time, but there's been so much negativity. She's been sued a lot, whether that's her fault or the county's or some of each, I won't undertake to say. But I think she's a person of goodwill trying to do a good job. And I think if she had her own legal counsel that she could trust, even if you contracted with some private law firm that does this kind of public work to, devote it 10 hours a week or whatever, that would be of great assistance to her, I think, in terms of complying with IPRA, which having won IPRA cases against the city and county, that's something I believe in, or in terms of, when you sue somebody with like this writ of mandamus, she's got no lawyer. How does she know what she should do? If she has commissioned these officers, how does she know whether she's supposed to file an official paper, write the judge, call the judge's clerk, or what? So I think she needs legal assistance, and that's on us. Anyway, thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Seeing none?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Sanchez.
Thank you. Before we move on, I did want just to add one other note if I could, and I know that was discussed during the presentation regarding the appeal process. And this is something that at the time interim county manager Stephen Lopez had brought to the commission. And really the intent of it was based off of feedback we had received from department directors in allowing them the ability to have some additional say and in the process of hiring of our individuals and just questioning, I won't say questioning, but just having another review as, we, in particular, we look at DASO, we look at fire and emergency responses. When it comes to public safety, there are specific requirements that have to go into that. And that was part of the discussion, part of the review to be added, and, working with HR and how do we improve that process. And that was something that we as the commission had taken that input and trying to make that a better process for our department directors, for our based off of that feedback. And so I just wanted to put it out there that this was something that I think I had seen a quote out there that may have been attributed to the sheriff on social media saying that she filled out a piece of paper and that nothing happened with it. But this process is new. It was taken and it was utilized in that evaluation process. And it was something that, again, I think in the spirit of trying to continue to find ways that we improve and get better and take that feedback, that's something that the BOCC did last year with that step. So I do hope that we continue to take those opportunities. I appreciate the time, Mr. Lopez, bringing that forward to us. And so just wanted to put that out there. Like I said, it was a new process that was brought forth because of feedback we had received in the past. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Reynolds.
thank you. After all this discussion, I would like to make one statement, and that is that it's difficult sometimes to remove our history from our decisions. So many people look at what happened in the past and they say the behavior that occurred in the past is the same behavior that's occurring now. And it's hard to be unbiased when considering current facts and evidence of previous facts. And I think it's important that we, as commissioners, take the time to remove our egos and our history from any of these kind of activities so that we do the right thing every time and not rely on previous experience to make judgments that evidence and stuff that may or may not exist. I'm not condoning any of the behavior of anybody in this situation. I think we can all do better, whether it's internal processes or external processes. And I believe that we need to stop and just back up for a second and try to understand and remember what our ultimate goal is. And our ultimate goal of this board is to provide safety and security to the citizens of this community. And secondly, to make sure that we run our meetings and our activity and the things that we do in such a way that we always keep in mind that we're representing the people and not our personal beliefs. Okay, thank you.
Okay. You good, Commissioner? Okay, moving on. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Niels.